about Jayananda? You
Yes,
were?
Guru Maharaj.
Oh, okay. All right, you go ahead and speak, and then I'll listen, and then when you're, I'll fill in every once in a while.
Guru Maharaj, it would be wonderful if you spoke for the entire time, Guru Maharaj. We will all be very happy to listen to you.
My time is short. I only have until the half hour, and then I have to end. So we can definitely split it up. All right, let me see here. You start, and I'm gonna join you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'll just start the greeting. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much for joining today. Today is very auspicious day, Appearance Day of Lord Narasimha Dev. So we are very fortunate to have Her Grace Sridevi Mataji to enlighten us, and our dear Guru Maharaj to enlighten us on this topic. Thank you so much. Mataji, I will turn it over to you. Hare Krishna.
Go ahead, I'm gonna listen to your class. Go ahead.
Please accept my humble obeisances, dear Guru Maharaj. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to you, Guru Maharaj. I humbly beg for your merciful blessings to please empower me to glorify this great Vaishnava Jayananda Prabhu. I humbly offer my obeisances to all the assembled Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis, and I humbly request your blessings too for glorifying this great devotee, Jayananda Prabhu. Now, who is Jayananda Prabhu? Jayananda Prabhu is a very special soul who came to assist Srila Prabhupada in the San Francisco area. Actually, he was born in a very well-to-do family, even graduated with a degree in mechanical engineering. And he actually would have been set for a very opulent material life. But he had no such inclination. Being very simple and very pure at heart, he was actually searching for something else. And he was happy driving a cab in the streets of San Francisco. And that's how he came across an article, a newspaper article, that a Swami was visiting the Bay Area. By that time, he had become so much disillusioned with material life that when he read that article, he later said he felt a ray of hope. And so he began attending the early morning temple programs and would sometimes be the only person listening to Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavatam classes. But the remarkable thing about Jayananda Prabhu was the moment he came in touch with Srila Prabhupada, the moment he came in touch with Krishna consciousness, he took to it like a fish takes to water. There was no looking back. There were no doubts. There was no, I need to figure this out, or I need to check this out, or I need to carefully analyze everything before I accept Krishna consciousness. He was completely convinced because he saw how pure Srila Prabhupada was. And he went on to say, I knew the Swami wouldn't cheat me. So he just gave his heart, he gave his life, he gave everything to the Krishna consciousness movement and to the instructions of Srila Prabhupada. From then on, he devoted his life. In fact, he would drive a cab and all his earnings would go to the temple. And then in his spare time, he would do everything possible to keep the temple going. He was a little older than all the other people. He was 28 years old when he joined. And so the others were much younger than him. But another very remarkable thing about Jayananda Prabhu was he never portrayed himself as senior or advanced or older or knowing more than others, even though he was actually a very pure soul and actually very advanced. Even a new bhakta, he would treat that person like he's a senior and would very humbly try to serve that person. All the time, from morning to evening, he was completely absorbed in service. He never wasted a moment. In fact, it is said that he never took a nap, even though he was so busy that from early morning, from 4 a.m. when he would wake up, would enthusiastically chant all his rounds in the Mangalarti period, and then he would begin his day of service, and he would go on non-stop for hours and hours until late into the night. And people know that he loved prasadam. He just loved prasadam. He loved to take vast quantities of prasadam. He liked to distribute prasadam. And the most significant thing was he would involve everyone in some way or the other in the movement of Lord Chaitanya by engaging them, especially for the Rath Yatra cards, for which he became famous, because when Srila Prabhupada expressed his desire that I want to establish this Rath Yatra, Sriman Jayananda Prabhu went to work building the Rath Yatra cards himself, and the very first Rath Yatra in San Francisco is credited to Sriman Jayananda Prabhu's pioneering efforts to fulfill this desire of Srila Prabhupada that Rath Yatra should be held in all the major cities of the world. His popularity was such that everyone loved him. He would go out into the streets, he would go into the marketplace, he would befriend everyone, and he would get all bhog. He would get so many things, either free or at discounted rates, just to keep the temple going. And everybody loved him. They would call him Johnny Ananda because he was so blissful, he was so happy, and he would treat everybody like they were his long lost friends. So there was no stranger for Sriman Jayananda Prabhu. He would just befriend everybody, and then he would even engage people right off the street to come and help in building Lord Jagannath's Rath Yatra cart. Once, one devotee recalls, two drunks were staggering along the road and the Rath Yatra cart was being built, and he said, hey, you guys, why don't you come on over and help us build this Rath Yatra cart? So that was his magnanimity, that was his compassion, that no matter who it was, they can engage in the service of the Lord and begin their devotional life and be saved from the cycle of repeated birth and death. And he would not hesitate to do any menial service. He would take out the trash, he would repair the truck, he would cook prasadam, he would go out on book distribution, he would lead the kirtan, he would clean the temple, and he was famous. Whatever festivals were held, after that he would say, let's clean up everything, and he would make sure everything was very clean, both at the start and at the end of every festival. So some more great, memories are there of Jayananda Prabhu, and his compassion was so legendary that when a newcomer joined, he said that I would like to help. And that time, Jayananda Prabhu was actually taking out the trash. So he said, all right, let's go and take out the trash. And very willingly, this young man went with him and took out the trash. And he recalls, he said, if the garbage man here is so blissful, what the rest of the devotees must be like. And he was so impressed with bliss with which Jayananda Prabhu carried out even the most menial, most simple of services, that he was very attracted to join the movement just on the basis of Jayananda Prabhu's demeanor, his attitude, and his friendliness towards anyone who had come to help out in the temple. So Jayananda Prabhu was known for being very, very focused and very determined, and he never liked to get involved in any negativity. If he would hear any kind of criticism or fault finding or people just wasting their time in frivolous talk, he would just disappear. He would just go away from there. And he would never encourage, nor did he indulge in it, nor did he give a ear to it. He would never just involve himself in any kind of negativity, and he never criticized anyone either. It is important to note that he was so pure that everyone was seen as somebody, a spirit soul, struggling to serve Krishna. And so he was very kind-hearted and never ever criticized or found fault with anyone. Everyone noted that if you started criticizing a devotee, Jayananda Prabhu would disappear from there. You could also never praise him, because the moment you started praising him, he would just disappear. He didn't like to hear any praise about himself. Once, someone asked him, how does one advance in Krishna consciousness? How do you know that you're making advancement in Krishna consciousness? And Jayananda Prabhu said in a very, puzzled and very childlike way, I don't know. I'm too busy, with service. This is Jayananda Prabhu's simplicity and his pure heartedness and his total disinterest in trying to see what level I'm at and how much I'm advancing. He was just focused on serving Prabhupada. In fact, his service would be at such a high level that Srila Prabhupada would ask, where is Jayananda? Where is Jayananda? And people would have to go and search and find where is Jayananda. He would be in dirty overalls underneath a truck, repairing the truck, or he would be busy repairing something, and they would have to bring him to Prabhupada, and he would protest and say, oh, but I'm so dirty, I'm so fallen, how can I see Prabhupada? And they would say, no, Prabhupada wants to see you. So this is the way he was. He didn't want the limelight. He didn't want to be seen as somebody doing so much for Prabhupada, but he just was focused on the instructions of Srila Prabhupada. Once, Srila Prabhupada, finally, once he did come into the temple room, and he was very tall, very strong, very handsome, very well built. So when Srila Prabhupada saw him come, he said, there is Jayananda. He looks like Lord Chaitanya. And Jayananda started blushing and blushing and blushing, and he just didn't know how to react. And people noticed how simple, how humble, and actually how shy he was. He didn't really want any limelight. But Srila Prabhupada, seeing his pure-heartedness, he made that comment about Jayananda Prabhu. They became almost like friends, it is said, because Jayananda Prabhu had a very strong, not Vapu, Vani connection. That means he was focused on serving the order of Srila Prabhupada to the exclusion of all else. He didn't waste time in anything that would take him away from Krishna consciousness. Now, when he was very young, within a very short time, he was only about 39 or so, when he developed leukemia. He had very painful, swollen lymph nodes and lymph glands all over his body. He was actually, in a very, very difficult, painful state because his body was suffering from cancer, but he never stopped. He kept on trying to serve the Rath Yatra cart building and organizing the Rath Yatra, and till the last, he was trying to help. He was always trying to serve. His body was emaciated and he was very down, but his focus was how to serve, how to help, how to guide, how to direct. And that was the way he was. He never considered his own self. He only considered the mission of Srila Prabhupada until the end. At one point, he even said, because by the time there were so many, not exactly controversies, rebellious attitudes among so many young devotees, he said that I'm happy that I'm leaving before my spiritual master. I don't want to wait for anything further. I'm happy that I'm going before Srila Prabhupada leaves the planet. So he even had no fear of death. He didn't have any concern for his own self. Just wanted to serve Srila Prabhupada to the greatest extent possible.
So, thank you.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
I want to add that it's on the point of him becoming fully absorbed in service, even though he was quite sick, even before that when he was at the hospital. And they were trying to, get him back to health, but it wasn't possible. The nurses, of course, were arranging for him to get food from the hospital, but he never wanted the hospital food. He said, bring me the prasadam from the temple. So the devotees would sneak in and bring him the prasad from the temple. And he would eat. He would eat good amounts of prasadam. He loved prasadam. And so he didn't want to eat this hospital food. He wanted to stay connected with Krishna prasadam. His departure was on May 1st, 1977, and it happened in a very auspicious way. He was at the Philadelphia Temple in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. I think he was in the room there. And as soon as the conch shell blew to announce the beginning of Mangal Arti, he left his body. Very auspicious. Right at the beginning of the Mangal Arti, which is the most auspicious time of the day, Mangala means auspicious, and he disappeared from the world. Just to indicate all of us, Krishna wanted to show here is a very special and a very, very great soul who actually came and really helped Srila Prabhupada. Now, Prabhupada never did only one thing one time, and that he designated the Disappearance Day of Jayananda Prabhu to be the day before Lord Nrsingadev's appearance every year. And Prabhupada never, before or even after that, gave any kind of individual recognition to anyone in the movement, any disciple. Jayananda was the only one that Prabhupada said we should celebrate his appearance day, disappearance day every year, just the day before Nrsingadev's appearance. And also, Prabhupada said we should take his picture and put it on the Rath Yatra cart everywhere around the world when we do Rath Yatra. So you'll see, when we do Rath Yatras around the world, we always have a picture of Jayananda sitting on the very front part of the Rath Yatra. How he helped Prabhupada develop the Rath Yatra was amazing. There's a very interesting story that in 1976, Prabhupada said, I want to do Rath Yatra down New York City in the best street within the city, which is Fifth Ave. He told his devotees, somehow or other, get permission to do, for we can have the Rath Yatra down Fifth Avenue. Devotees worked hard, going through a lot of administration, meeting different people. Finally, it was granted. Prabhupada felt like he had conquered the world. And now the carts were being built because they always had to build the carts from the scratch for each of the Rath Yatras. So Jayananda was there. And they found a place which was right near the Hudson River in New York. It was an open area. It was actually Donald Trump. We couldn't find any place anywhere to set up the Rath Yatra carts for building in this busy city of New York. But we contacted Mr. Trump, and Mr. Trump gave us a piece of his land, which was right near the Hudson River, to use as a place for building the carts. Sometimes we say that this is probably one of the reasons why he was able to become president. He had done this service for Srila Prabhupada. But going back to the storyline, the devotees had worked so hard building those carts, and the next day was the Rath Yatra. At 6 o'clock in the evening, the Rath Yatra carts were finished. Everybody had worked hard under the guidance and direction of Jayananda, putting these carts together. It wasn't easy. And then about 10 o'clock that night, extreme strong wind came off the Hudson River and hit the canopy of Balaram's cart, knocked the cart over and broke the cart. My God, here it was, 10 o'clock at night, just before the next morning when Rath Yatra was to begin. Jayananda, when he found out, he organized the devotees. Everyone got up and everyone started to work under his guidance throughout the whole night. They worked and they found pieces that they had thrown away that they didn't seem like they needed to use. But this is a really amazing story. I have it in detail on written paper. It's actually written down. How the devotees were scraping together, finding pieces that they had thrown away in order to rebuild Balaram's cart. From about 10, 11 o'clock in the evening, right through the night. And by 6 or 7 o'clock the next morning, Balaram's cart was done. And it was in good shape. Prabhupada never found out until later on after the Rath Yatra. They didn't want to tell Prabhupada that what had happened because they knew Prabhupada would be unhappy knowing that one of the major carts was no longer there for the Rath Yatra festival. But Jayananda saved the day along with many other devotees who worked heroically and gave up their sleep the whole night just to build that cart again. And it wasn't easy. That cart was practically smashed to bits when it hit the ground. That's a beautiful, beautiful pastime illustrating, the determination of Jayananda to serve Srila Prabhupada, especially when it came to Rath Yatra festivals. I want to divert a little bit to a more contemporary story that the first disciple that I ever had when I was beginning to take the position of initiating spiritual master. I preached in the same city that I joined. It's interesting. And that city was Denver, Colorado. That's where I joined in 1972. And in 2006, I performed my first initiation ceremony in the same city by one lady. Her name was Shanti. And I gave her the name Kalindi. Now, Kalindi, well, later on, she had a job as a hospice nurse. And she would take care of persons who were leaving the body. So one day she was asked to take care of this one lady, elderly lady who was there, who was soon to leave the body. And then she's taking care of her. And then somehow they got to know each other. And this lady said, "Oh, you are a Hare Krishna." And Kalindi said, "Yes." "Well, my son was a Hare Krishna." "Oh, and who was your son?" "Well, they used to call him Jayananda." Amazing. So the mother of Jayananda, in her last days on earth, got the care of a devotee who took care of her to the very last, and then, of course, helped her to exit what they call exit the world in a Krishna conscious frame of mind. Krishna had arranged for this devotee Kalindi to somehow or other become the person to show special mercy to that person who was so dear to Srila Prabhupada. And his mother, obviously, is also as dear as Jayananda is to Srila Prabhupada. And she got special mercy. And then Kalindi, later on, she appeared at the funeral of Jayananda's mother and spoke and gave a very nice and very Krishna conscious talk about glorifying Jayananda and glorifying how Krishna had arranged in this most miraculous way to have a devotee take care of the mother who was the mother of one of the most important, the greatest devotees in our entire Krishna conscious movement, at least at that particular time. So you see how Krishna works. He's always grateful. And he shows his gratefulness in the most amazing ways. That's a beautiful story. And just recently, I just came across an article that was written in Dandavats describing the whole story in detail. So if you go on Dandavats, I think within the last 2 weeks, that story was placed on Dandavats, and you can read the entire story is how Kalindi, out of her profession, taking care of people who were exiting the world, somehow or other, got the service of taking care of the mother of Jayananda. Okay, so yes, so I have to stop here, and thank you for giving me a chance to speak. Sridevi has said so many wonderful things in such a beautiful way. So I off back to Sridevi to continue and continue to describe, and also you can field questions from here. I'll have to offer my humble obeisances to all the devotees. Vanchakalpa to the Bishchak, Vibhasindhi Vachak, Itanam Bhavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namaho Namaha. Have a wonderful day and continue to hear the glories of this very special devotee. As it says in the scripture, that the devotee of the Lord becomes so dear to the Lord that when one worships and honors the devotee of the Lord, it is more valuable, more powerful, and more pleasing to the Lord than one who worships the Lord directly. Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Thank you so much for there's a Jayanand Prabhu. I mean, I'm also hearing first time, and so nice to know about, and we are so inspired, like, praying that we also imbibe those qualities. Yeah, thank you so much, Hare Krishna.
So I'll have to leave, so I guess Sridevi can continue on with her narration. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. My humble obeisances to you. Thank you very much for telling us about the beautiful pastime with Kalindi. And definitely look it up on Dandavats to read it in detail. But it's so wonderful to hear how Krishna reciprocated with his sincere devotee and took care of his mother.
Thank you very much, Gurudev.
It's so wonderful to hear about the loving connection that the devotee always has with Krishna and how Krishna took care of his devotee's mother. In fact, Srila Prabhupada said, the parents of my disciples will understand the value of this Krishna consciousness movement at the time of death because the Lord himself will come to take them. So this is how valuable our Krishna consciousness movement is and how much Krishna is grateful and reciprocates with his devotee. So I would like to, speak a little bit more because they say when you glorify and remember these great souls, we get 100th of their good qualities. So it's very wonderful that simply by hearing, simply by knowing, simply by reading, simply by studying, and simply by glorifying the lives of great souls, we can also get 100th of their qualities. So we've already spoken about several of Srila Jayananda Prabhu's good qualities. I would like to now read some memories of Srila Prabhupada by senior disciples of our movement. One of them was Dashrath Sutta Prabhu. So as I said, he was actually in very severe pain at the last stages of his life, but he never took that seriously. He simply focused on his service. So I'll read out a little bit. During that period of cart construction in May and June of 76, Jayananda was becoming more and more uncomfortable with the painful lumps on his legs and armpits. He didn't know what it was. He didn't care to know since he was so focused on completing the Rath Yatra construction, cart construction for the pleasure of Srila Prabhupada and Lord Jagannath. Anyone who knew Jayananda understood that personal consideration was absolutely last on his list of priorities, for he was always concerned with how to perform more and more selfless devotional service. The temple authorities became worried about his health. So we set up an old couch on the loading deck for Jayananda to sit and direct from. It was practically useless program because we would get him to sit there for a brief spell. But as soon as someone would call down from the cart, "Hey Jayananda, how should I fit this piece right here?" he would scramble right off that couch and get up on the cart to do the work. And then he would just keep working and working, and we could never get him to stay on the couch and let us act as his arms and legs. He would always jump up and get into a lot of hard work for the rest of the day. So that was Jayananda. He wouldn't sit still. He would just go on and on and on. Now, this is really interesting. Right up onto the festival day, Jayananda was becoming increasingly crippled with a swollen lymph glands on his legs. He could hardly walk, especially during the last few days before the parade. Nobody got any sleep at all. That kind of schedule was very rough for us young strapping youths. So certainly it must have been devastating for Jayananda with his failing health. But the amazing thing was that this crippled and hobbling Jayananda miraculously danced and danced and danced like an energetic teenager throughout the entire Rath Yatra parade, all the way down Fifth Avenue from Central Park to Tompkins Square Park, 52 blocks. Jayananda was dancing and chanting Hare Krishna while steering Lord Jagannath's cart in the lead. He sometimes turned around and walked backwards in order to enthusiastically look up at Lord Jagannath's smiling face. Then he would turn around again and skip forward, shouting, Jai Jagannath, as he raised one hand in the air. There is a movie taken of that parade, and you can see Jayananda cavorting about like a young wild stallion. So it was incredible to witness such a level of transcendental devotion being manifest in this person, especially if you were aware that his body was actually very ill and unable to even walk very well. So it's amazing to see how outstanding was his devotion that he transcended the body. And, you know, we can think of our own Johnny Ananda, Janaki Nath Prabhu, who had a similar mood of service that he didn't care about his body. He also suffered from cancer. And, you know, he didn't take that too seriously either. So Jayananda's enthusiasm for any service was so wonderful that he would say and do anything transcendental to get the job done. For example, once he had been put in charge of the gift shop, he would enthusiastically tell everyone that anything made in the shop was coming all the way from Lord Rath Yatra cart in Puri Jagannath. There was an old table lamp that had a wooden base, or maybe someone donated it. But he would enthusiastically tell everyone that it was made from the wood taken from the Lord's Rath Yatra cart in Puri Jagannath. Or if he had some saris to sell, all day long, he would proudly proclaim to everyone that they were made from the prasadam clothes previously worn by Jagannath deities in Puri. In this way, I noticed that Jayananda habitually took ordinary items and wholeheartedly accepted them to be factual remnants of the Lord's mercy. Thinking back, we can now see it was his transcendental vision. But at the time, it was obviously just a bunch of tall tales and fantastic stories he was telling. Watching all this going on, I wouldn't reveal it to anyone, for it was a little secret we had. I saw many persons go, "Ooh, this is from Jagannath Puri, I will take it." Since Jayananda was so lovable and energetic about whatever he was doing, we all accepted his association with good cheer, even if he was playing pranks on us. So this is the way different people have glorified Jayananda Prabhu. That was Dashrath Sutta Das. Now here is Kalakanta Prabhu. Karandar Prabhu remembers how Jayananda preached to him on his first day in the temple. As they worked together preparing a little garden for Srila Prabhupada at the old Los Angeles temple, Jayananda said, "You know, things don't always go just right in Krishna consciousness. You just have to keep chanting." At that time, Karandar couldn't imagine how anything could go wrong in Krishna's service. Years later, however, as he found himself still remembering those words, Karandar could appreciate the real potency of what Jayananda had said. So many things may come and go. Just have faith in the holy name. Another devotee remembers. Chandanacharya recalls seeing Jayananda engaged in preaching very late one night. It was 11:30 p.m. and Jayananda was fixing a broken down Sankirtan van. He lay on his back working under the van and he preached to two hippies who were standing nearby. All they could see of him was a pair of legs, but they stood by listening intently, completely absorbed as Jayananda worked and preached away to them. So he was very, very fixed in his preaching attitude that even when working, he would preach and people would listen. As soon as he felt anyone was ready, Jayanand would preach to him about chanting and about Srila Prabhupada. There was no protocol or strict etiquette, just sincere and confidential glorification of Krishna. True to his character, Jayananda was often seen preaching to guests from his wheelchair, even during his last days in this world. Devotees who knew him could tell from a distance exactly what he was saying. You just have to have faith in the holy name. Now, this is legendary, his humility. Kalakanda Prabhu is saying this. Humility was certainly Jayananda's most prominent quality. He treated everyone as his superior, even new devotees. Maharaj Das remembers that Jayananda was always asking his advice. Hey, Bhakta Mike, what do you think of this? Although his service was glorious, he never wanted any glory. He avoided praise like the plague. Devotees got to know that if they wanted to be around him, they'd better not praise Jayananda. Otherwise, he would simply leave. His qualities and services were so great. He was just around a few years, but he was very, very humble. If he ever spoke about himself at all, Jayananda would speak very humbly. Lochan Das recalls, it was difficult not to think of yourself as being better than him. If you had any reason to be puffed up, Jayananda would bring it out in you. Feeling himself unworthy, he would step aside so that others could lead kirtan, give class, or do arti. Instead, he could be found fixing cars, unplugging toilets, washing dishes, or taking out trash. So, Jayananda was always ready to do whatever was necessary to push on Krishna consciousness. He was expert at everything: cooking, preaching, deity worship, public relations, sankirtan, selling incense, construction, and everything else that it takes to run a temple. He was a tireless worker. He would be the first one up in the morning and the last one to sleep at night. It was always Jayananda who was running out to get the flowers, Jayananda who was washing dishes and making sure the kitchen was clean, Jayananda who was often missing class while he was out doing some service, and Jayananda who was always encouraging others to go out and preach and setting the example himself. Whatever assignment he was given, he would always get it done, even if he had to suffer personally for it. No matter how hard he was working, he would never stop for a nap. He seemed to be inexhaustible. Jambavan Prabhu now remembers that many times the San Francisco devotees would go to Berkeley to distribute the leftover prasad after a Sunday feast. First, Jayananda would be in the kitchen cleaning. Then someone would say, hey, how about this leftover prasadam? Jayananda would say, okay, first let's get this kitchen clean. He would organize a cleanup crew and then work twice as hard as anybody. Then he would transfer the prasad, load it and the devotees into the van, drive the van to Berkeley, organize the distribution of prasadam, and lead the kirtan while we distributed the prasadam. In later years, when he was with the Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party, he would help manage and sustain the traveling bus program and simultaneously do all-day Sankirtan day in and day out, side by side, with brahmacharis who were scarcely half his age. In spite of his advanced position and seniority, he never asked for any special treatment. Leading devotees would often describe him as the most advanced devotee in the movement. We already talked about he would never find fault with anyone. He would not criticize any devotee. Because he knew how to encourage people, the temple leaders would always assign new men to work with Jayananda. He saw no distinction between new and old devotee. Both were his superiors. He could quickly give a new man a sense of identity and a feeling that he belonged in Krishna consciousness. A true Vaishnav, he was expert at fanning any little spark of Krishna consciousness into a big fire. Few will dispute the claim that Jayananda made more devotees and helped pull more devotees through than anyone else in the movement. He was dear to everyone, like the 6 Goswamis. He was dear both to the gentle and the ruffians. He was as much at home with the Italians at the produce market as with the brahmacharis in the temple. He would make friends on street sankirtan, and they would often come up to him and say, "Hey, where have you been?" Once a devotee was approached by a straggling drunk in San Francisco. The drunk looked at his robes and asked the devotee, "Hey, where's my old friend Jayananda?" They would call him Johnny Ananda. Many devotees, including Danavir and Chandanacharya, had the experience of taking over Jayananda's old territory on incense selling runs or boga runs. They would meet people who said such things as, "Where is Johnny Ananda? That man is the nicest and most pure man I have ever met." One man told Chandanacharya, "Well, I don't know much about your philosophy, but if that Jayananda is into it, it must be all right." Among the devotees, Jayananda was like a big brother, always compassionate and willing to listen to them. But devotees rarely burdened him with their problems. "When you were around Jayananda," said Karandar, "you had no problems." The devotees loved Jayananda and talked about him during long drives on traveling Sankirtan. He was dear to them because he had a sense of humor. Jambavan Das recalls being awakened one night at midnight by Jayananda. "Wake up," said Jayananda, "I've got a benediction for you." He then pushed a big samosa into sleepy Jambavan's mouth. Like Maharaj Yudhishthir, Jayananda's enemy was never born. He was very expert at engaging everyone. He once wrote, "When I reflect on my consciousness, had I not had association with devotees and Srila Prabhupada, I shudder to imagine the nightmare I would be in. If we could become a little dedicated to distributing the mercy, so many could be saved so much suffering." Because of his genuine compassion, Krishna gave Jayananda the unique ability to make people want to serve Krishna directly or indirectly. Whenever a new bhakta would come, Jayananda made him feel that he was engaged in important work. He was older, bigger, and stronger than just about anyone in the temple, and everyone was glad to be working under him. He was willing to let people do things in their own way without getting finicky about details, unless somebody's creativity interfered with practical necessity. New bhakta or old, everyone felt satisfied after a day's work with Jayananda. Once he and Maharaj Das were struggling to load a heavy refrigerator on a truck. Two drunks were walking up the alley, and Jayananda said, "I'm going to give them a chance to do some devotional service." His enthusiasm for devotional service was contagious, and this was no exception. Those drunks were right there in helping, and the job was done in no time. Afterwards, as usual, Jayananda said to the drunks, "Now say Hare, now say Krishna, now say Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Jai Hari Bol." Thank you, fellas. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Jayananda was well known as a transcendental miser. He hated to spend any of Srila Prabhupada's money. Personally, he had almost no possessions, even during his years as a householder. When he was on the road selling incense, he would sleep in a car or on the bench, or sometimes with friends. He would use his personal charm with people to get them to give everything free or at a discount for Krishna. Without spending huge sums of money, he would personally collect all bhoga, flowers, lumber, paint, and everything else needed to put on Rath Yatra each year. Once he went to see one of his famous friends at the produce market, Banana King Louis. He came back with 4 free truckloads of bananas and first-class pineapples. Coupled with some donated milk products, the devotees ate bananas, pineapples, and cream, as much as anyone could eat, all for free. Jayananda would get almost anything done for free, such as printing, advertising, and mimeographing for Rath Yatra publicity. What he couldn't get done for free, he would get at a discount. And when he paid, he'd get his money's worth. For example, after the festival would end, he would rent a big truck with which to haul all the equipment back to the temple. Although the devotees would be exhausted after weeks of hard work, he would insist that everyone come out and help pack things away Otherwise, he would have to keep the truck for another day and pay another $50 rent, and he didn't want to do that. Although he was a senior devotee and could have had anything he wanted, he always dressed in old dhotis and work clothes, which he would buy for $1 per set at the Salvation Army thrift store. So there's so much more. There's really a lot we can write, but I would like to end the class by reading out a letter that Srila Prabhupada wrote to Jayananda 4 days after he passed away. Srila Prabhupada came to know that he had left the world. My dear Jayananda, please accept my blessings. I am feeling very intensely your separation. In 1967, you joined me in San Francisco. You were driving my car and chanting Hare Krishna. You were the first man to give me some contribution of $5,000 for printing my Bhagavad Gita. After that, you have rendered very favorable service to Krishna in different ways. I so hope at the time of your death, you were remembering Krishna, and as such, you have been promoted to the eternal association of Krishna. If not, if you had any tinge of material desire, you have gone to the celestial kingdom to live with the demigods for many thousands of years and enjoy the most opulent life of material existence. From there, you can promote yourself to the spiritual world. But even if one fails to promote himself to the spiritual world, at that time he comes down again on the surface of this globe and takes birth in a big family like a yogis or a brahmanas or an aristocratic family, where there is again chance of reviving Krishna consciousness. But as you were hearing Krishna Kirtan, I'm sure that you were directly promoted to Krishna Loka. Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tatvataha tattvadeham punarjanma neti mameti sarjuna. Krishna has done a great favor to you, not to continue your deceased body, and has given you a suitable place for your service. Thank you very much. Your ever well-wisher, A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami. So we can see over here how much Srila Prabhupada loved his disciple and how much he missed. He said he will miss his devotee. And here is Tamal Krishna Maharaj Goswami's remembrance of Prabhupada's giving up the body and what Srila Prabhupada said. Today we received word that Jayananda Prabhu had given up his body. When Srila Prabhupada was informed, he said, yes, sooner or later we must all go. Afterwards, tears came to his divine grace's eyes. He was one of my very best disciples. He was the first to give me $5,000, which was used for printing teachings of Lord Chaitanya. He used to drive me in the car, and while driving, he would be chanting. I asked Prabhupada about Jayananda's destination. He is not lost. He will be promoted. If he still has some desire for sense gratification, then he will be promoted to the higher planets, where he will live for 10,000 years with full enjoyment. By then, he may have perfected his devotional service, and he will be transferred back to Godhead. Or if he has not yet perfected his devotional service, he will be reborn in a very high aristocratic pious family. But if he was thinking of Krishna, then he can have gone directly to Krishna Loka. 11th May 1977. Today, everyone thought about the departure of Jayananda. Srila Prabhupada received further word about his last hours. Jayananda had been in great pain for months, but he never ceased serving Lord Jagannath and making arrangements for his Rath Yatra celebration. On his last day, the pain increased to the point that he could no longer even chant the holy name. Mourning in great pain, he expressed the uselessness of maintaining his deceased body any longer. At the very end, he hugged his tape recorder tightly, listening to his spiritual master's chanting of Hare Krishna, and left his body. Of his beloved disciple, Srila Prabhupada said, I am very proud to have such a disciple. He has died gloriously. His death is wonderful, and we should all follow his example. Prabhupada quoted Bhagavad Gita 8.5 and read the purport in confirmation. Jayananda has gone to Vaikuntha to be with Krishna. His photo will be placed on the Rath Yatra card, and in all our temples we will hold a feast in honor as we do on other Vaishnavs' disappearance days. Jai Jayananda, Jai Jayananda. Prabhupada cries remembering you. 13 June 1977. The new Rath Yatra issue of Back to Godhead arrived, and Prabhupada had me read a few of the articles. After looking for a long time at the cover photo of Lord Jagannath, pictured with his faithful devotee Jayananda, Prabhupada took off his glasses and wiped tears from his eyes with his handkerchief. So just wanting to share a little bit of memories of Jayananda Prabhu from other God brothers, and finally Srila Prabhupada's loving remembrance of Jayananda. So I will end my class there. Thank you all very much for listening so patiently. I know some of it must have been a little difficult because I was reading off straight, but we can open up for questions, comments.
Thank you, Mataji. Thank you so much for reading this beautiful memories of Jayananda Prabhu. I'm also listening first time. So beautifully you have shared all the glories. I don't feel like stopping here. I wanted to hear more and more. So many qualities that we really need to learn. I feel like just going back and read that again. So many things I learned. How like Jayananda Prabhu is so compassionate and how he selflessly worked, spreading this Krishna consciousness, even in like when his body is like completely in illness, how he came above that, how he transcended the body and how he served in Srila Prabhupada's mission. That's really amazing. And that's really that we need to learn today's class. Yeah. Thank you so much, Mataji, again, for beautiful reading and sharing these glories. Yeah. Hare Krishna. Yeah, dear devotees, any questions, comments, realizations, or anything you like to share on this day or Disappearance Day of Jayananda Prabhu? Please go ahead. You can unmute, you can type in the chat box, or you can just raise your hand. I can call out to you. And devotees, I just request, if you're possible, humbly request, if possible, please turn on your cameras. It would be nice to see you all. Raj Prabhu, please go ahead.
Thank you, Matthew. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to Guru Maharaj, all glories to all of the Vaishnavas, all glories to Jayananda Prabhu. Thank you so much for your beautiful words glorifying and describing the great saint Jayananda Prabhu. We can never get here enough about Jayananda Prabhu. Could hear about him all day long. I wish we could have a festival where all the senior devotees could just talk about him all day, or for a full weekend or something. You just can't get enough. There are so many stories, but there was one particular story that I heard that really struck my heart, and I just thought I'd share that one with you. I heard it from Sutapa Prabhu in London, and he was talking about a class that Jayananda Prabhu was giving, and first started talking about how Jayananda Prabhu's classes were so full of enthusiasm, so amazing, so uplifting. And in one particular class, Jayananda Prabhu was really glorifying Srila Prabhupada. And then all of a sudden in the class, one I don't know if it was a devotee or just somebody, stood up and said, "The way you're glorifying Srila Prabhupada, anyone would think that he was God." And then Jayadeva Prabhu paused for a moment, and he then said, "No, Srila Prabhupada is not God. But to me, he's greater than God, because he lifted me up from this miserable condition, and he gave me God." And then he completely broke down. And I will never forget that.
Srila Prabhupada is more than God? He said that?
He said, to me, Srila Prabhupada is greater than God.
Oh, greater than God. Haribol! Wonderful. That is so true, Actually, they say that if Guru is standing before you and God is standing before you, whom will you offer obeisances to first? And the answer is you will offer the obeisances to the Guru, because only by the Guru's mercy do you know anything about God or can you do any service for God. Without Guru, nothing is possible. Very nice. Thank you. Beautiful, beautiful anecdote about Jayananda. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you for sharing that. Really touched the heart. So nice. Yeah, really, Guru is so, it's like Guru is God for us. He's a Paramatma manifestation. Like, yeah. So, devotees, any more realizations, anything we like to glorify or share something on this day? Mataji, I don't see anything, but I'm also like learning so much, and I heard about this. It's really touching my heart, these qualities. So Mataji, Guru Maharaj was telling about that lady who served in hospital. So that lady is Jayananda Prabhuji's mother. Sorry, I couldn't get that last time. So
No, she's Guru Maharaj's first disciple. First disciple of Guru Maharaj. In 2006, after Guru Maharaj became an initiating spiritual master, he initiated this girl, Shanti, and gave her the name Kalindi.
Okay.
And then Kalindi was a hospice nurse. She was working as a hospice nurse. And she got the opportunity to serve Jayananda Prabhu's mother as she was leaving her body.
Okay. So that was in hospital, right? That lady. Okay. Then she came to know that the lady was Jayananda Prabhuji.
Jayananda Prabhu's mother.
Oh, that's really
An arrangement that a devotee actually takes care of Jayananda Prabhu's mother. She even attended the funeral, and then she spoke glorifying Jayananda and glorifying his mother, how Krishna reciprocated with his sincere service. And Guru Maharaj said that article is there in Dandavats. About ago, article appeared.
Thank you. Could you also share the reading, Mataji, what you did today, so we can go back and read that again? Have any?
Yeah, sure. You mean I just put the links in the chat?
Yes.
Okay, remembrances of Jayananda. Let me just yeah, this is a very beautiful remembrances by different devotees who are senior devotees now in our movement, but who were his god brothers then. So this is by Kalakanda Prabhu. This one, life of Jayananda Prabhu. This is one. Then let me see. I pulled from 2-3 sources. So PKG's. Okay, this is by Dashrath Sutadas. I'll put that one also in the chat. This is also very beautiful eulogies about Jayananda Prabhu. And Dashrath Sutta. And Srila Prabhupada's remembrances and his letter to Jayananda Prabhu after his demise. That's also there. That's here.
Thank you.
Okay, this I didn't read out, but I spoke on this in the first part, before Guru Maharaj spoke. I spoke quite a lot from this one also. So this is all the different things that I pulled together.
Okay, Mataji, thank you for sharing that. I'll definitely go back and read those.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you, Mataji. I don't see any questions raised, but so many things you said. Humility, how he tolerated, everyone, how he treated everyone as superiors. That's really good. And how, like, he always looks for like a menial services. He doesn't want to lead any kirtan. Instead, he wanted to help in the kitchen. That is really something that, you have to learn. Yeah, Raj Prabhu, I see raised your hand again. You have anything to share?
Thank you, Mataji. I just remembering another pastime that I really liked that I heard from Kadamba Kanana Maharaj this morning. Forgive me that any other devotees that already heard it this morning, but it's so wonderful. I'm sure you won't mind hearing again. It was about when Jayananda Prabhu was very ill and he couldn't, and the treatment wasn't working, and his parents came to find out that he was ill, and they gave him £5,000 for this other type of treatment. And obviously, in those days, £5,000 was like a lottery winning. That was a large sum of money. But Jayananda Prabhu, although he was in so much pain and he was obviously so seriously ill, and there was no treatment. This was only the treatment that may help him. But he knew that his Guru Maharaj Srila Prabhupada wanted money to publish Krishna book. So he immediately took that £5,000 and offered it to Srila Prabhupada because he knew that he wanted money to publish Krishna book. And Srila Prabhupada was so grateful to him for that. And I think that just kind of explains the kind of person that he was.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Sorry.
Thank you, Prabhu, for sharing that.
Devotees, anything you like to share?
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Please
Krishna.
accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Guru Maharaj, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Yeah, all glories to Prabhupada, all glories to all of you.
Yes. Mataji, I don't have a question though, but yeah, I'm just listening to the qualities Jayananda Prabhu is exhibiting, and such amazing leadership qualities he possesses, and the level of humility, it is really unimaginable, to have such kind of humility, such rare jewels that Prabhupada had as the disciples. So I think he was one of that. And I wasn't, I missed the first 15 minutes, but after listening to the lecture, I think I'll listen to the lecture again, and I'll read about Jayananda Prabhu again. He is sounding really amazing. So thank you for sharing this. And the links and all, I'm definitely going to refer it again. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks to Sudhamataji also.
Yes, definitely. Thank you for requesting.
Thank you. I'm still meditating on the qualities that you have today. You have glorified, sharing the memories of Jayananda Prabhu. I mean, everything. I mean, so much we have to learn, like by glorifying this great Mahatmas. So we can also like follow their footsteps.
Yes. I was thinking like not even a drop of it, even not even the a part of it was what qualities he was having. Yeah.
Right. And this is something for us to meditate on, that how much purification we have to undergo before we can even have one drop of all those great qualities. And great souls have come into our movement just to show by their example. Even Janakinath Prabhu, he was very every soul is unique. but the same mood of extreme humility and extreme compassion and just tirelessly serving, not caring for the bodily ailment. My God, how difficult is that? I mean, you get one cut on your finger, or you stub your toe, or some little thing happens, and we're like, oh, my hand, my leg, my head, my this, my that, and we're so incapacitated, just by so bodily conscious rather than Krishna conscious. But all these are great souls teaching by their example that through the power of Krishna consciousness, you can transcend all these things which are holding us back actually, because the nature of the soul is unlimited. With unlimited service, there's unlimited things we can do. It's all our mind and body, keeping us shackled, with all sorts of nonsense, anarthas, keeping us tied down to the material energy rather than getting ourselves connected with Krishna.
Yes, Mataji, very true. And also, like Janakinath Prabhuji, as you said, like, so, I mean, even though he's so young, we have to learn so much, from Janakinath Prabhuji also. Like,
so young, 36 years old. This July 17th, I think, was his. He would have been 30. Yeah, we just had his birthday, so 37. So this will be his first disappearance anniversary coming up in July. And this soul will be remembered for generations to come because of the impact he has had.
Yes, Mataji, true. Yeah, and as Namrata Mataji said, like, it's a drop. We're not even like, there, like, as you said, Mataji, even cut, like, we are so bodily concept. I'm telling about myself, definitely all are like very elevated. So, yeah, but this
Krishna consciousness is so powerful. The holy name is so powerful. Like Jayananda Prabhu said, you can't expect everything to go right in Krishna consciousness. Just have faith in the holy name. Just keep chanting. We should remember, because always something will be there to hold us, but Krishna's holy name will help us to power through all that.
Yes, Mataji. Yeah, and definitely these classes, like by hearing, glorifying this great Mahatmas, I think it will purify us. Maybe it will give us that inspiration, motivation to follow.
And gives us faith also.
Faith also, definitely, Mataji. Yeah. Okay, Mataji. Thank you so much again, Mataji, for your beautiful class. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Guru Maharaj ki jai. All glories to Jayananda Prabhu.
Thank you all very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Thank you all.